All right, here we are. Well, thank you for joining me for another episode of Between Two File Cabinets. Today, I am joined with our guest, Tom Atkins. Tom, welcome to our online version of Between Two File Cabinets, and thank you for agreeing to have this conversation with me about child abuse prevention in Washtenaw County. And welcome to 2021. We are in a new year, and there's just a lot of excitement and angst and stress, and yet hope and wonderment for the future. So I just thank you and appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us today. You are a therapist in our community and you have a long time of being in Washtenaw County. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I've been practicing as a child and adolescent psychiatrist here since, I started my training in 2009 and opened my practice in 2013. And for most of that time, some of my work has included partnering with Washtenaw Community Mental Health, Youth and Family, and serving on the board, of course, for the Washtenaw Area Council for Children.
Awesome. So how did you become involved then with WACC? Was it through the Washtenaw community?
Yeah. So that was my work, just providing care for children and adolescents that were accessing mental health treatment through the county. And Liz Spring, who's the manager there, was an annual participant in the, actually, I think she was on the board and she was going, and it was, time for Oktoberfest. And I got invited to that event and was really just impressed with the event and with the mission of the organization, and actually asked the director at that time if we could have a lunch or talk about my possible participation, and then fortunately it worked out.
Awesome. Well, we're really glad that you took time to serve on our board for as long as you were able to. I know that a lot of changes have happened through the years, and child abuse prevention is one of those difficult topics to sometimes talk about in our community. Why is child abuse prevention important to you? Why is it significant to the work that you do?
I think that is really the work that needs to be emphasized. Unfortunately, a large part of my work as a child psychiatrist, actually when I'm working with children, adolescents, or adults, can easily be linked to childhood trauma. And the lack of really evidence-based care as far as like medications that help with that condition, um, can be difficult to have a clear path forward, as far as like healing and treatment. Therapy too. I mean, there's a lot of things that do work, but it's just an enormous amount of time and individual effort to overcome these awful experiences. So how much better it would be if these things didn't happen in the first place. And so I think that is something that a society should really emphasize, preventing the occurrence of these really traumatic and honestly, they're really experiences sort of shameful events too. They're really difficult to come back from.
You're absolutely right. And I think that any one of us could really think through our life and think about either a time whether we have personally been abused or maltreated or neglected, or a friend of ours or a neighbor or someone in our lives. Every single one of us can probably think of one person that has been affected by child abuse. And you hit the nail on the head right there, where you talk about, it's really hard to work through those things. So could we work towards preventing that from ever happening?
Sure.
Oftentimes when I get into conversations with people in the community, we talk about child abuse prevention and what I do. And they're always like, oh my gosh, how do you do that work? How do you stay invested? Isn't it stressful? Isn't it exhausting? And my response is, well, okay, but you have to think about what we do. At WACC, at Washtenaw Area Council for Children, we get to do the prevention side of things. We get to provide hope. We get to provide wellness and well-being for people so that kids don't become statistics, so they don't have to go through the stress and the strain and the shame that you were just talking about of child abuse. In your professional opinion, or even just in your opinion, how is prevention work different or valuable in your work or in your community?
Yeah, I mean, I think that prevention work, as I said to you before, I think is just a really classic example of good public health principles at work. You know, it's a lot of high quality information. It can be kind of time intensive, but low tech. And what it can accomplish is, right, educating the public. But also, I think it reduces a lot of stigma. I think that this is a topic like, I don't know, childhood pregnancy or substance use, that just people sort of shy away from having any conversation at all. And so, especially when we're talking about sexual abuse in the younger population, I know that sometimes those prevention projects can have trouble even getting funding because it just makes everyone so uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just showing leadership and asserting that, yeah, unfortunately, these things happen. And as the adults in the room or in the society, you know, we need to at least acknowledge it and have conversations about prevention. Because, you know, of course, the goal would be to not have these things happen at all. But secondary wins would be if, you know, cases of abuse could at least be identified earlier because the adults are more educated and more willing to consider those possibilities.
I love hearing you talk about that because I think so many times we think about prevention work, and what we do primarily is work with the kids. We do a lot of education in the school systems. And then we also provide a lot of professional development to teachers or other professionals in the community, therapists, counselors, social workers. And one of the struggles that I have there with that, and this is me personally and professionally, is I'm a parent. And so I know that as a parent, I hit my limits, and I need the support and resources just like everybody else. So in order for me to get through those tough times where, you know, you get between this point of either choosing to engage in an abusive act towards a child versus being a supportive and loving parent. Yeah, we're not perfect all the time. That's not what I'm saying. We don't have to be perfect all the time, but we also need to make sure that we're understanding that we still need support. We still need education. We still need to be awareness. We aren't given these babies and given a booklet and said, oh, here, this is how this happens. This is what's going to happen on day 1. This is what's going to happen on day 2015 or whatever, right? So I think that it's important for parents to really recognize that and own that and be okay with that. And I think you said earlier talked about shame. So there's lots of things that my brain was firing off about that, around the sexual abuse piece, around the parenting piece. You know, we're so quick to judge parents when we're struggling and when we're like suffering in the trenches. And it's okay to be like, you know what, I'm not at my best right now, and I need somebody to help support me and lift me up, right? And this is what's going to happen on day 2015 or whatever, right? So I think that it's important for parents to really recognize that and own that and be okay with that. And I think you said earlier talked about shame. So there's lots of things that my brain was firing off about that, around the sexual abuse piece, around the parenting piece. You know, we're so quick to judge parents when we're struggling and when we're like suffering in the trenches. And it's okay to be like, you know what, I'm not at my best right now, and I need somebody to help support me and lift me up, right? Are you still with me? Yeah, just talking a little bit about parents and parenting and how we struggle as parents. And it's okay to acknowledge that to say, yeah, I am in a bad space right now, and that's okay. And for others to be okay with that, like for us to know that, I think what I struggle with is that so many of us judge each other. And even in conversations with other moms and dads, in my network of people, we're just so hard on ourselves about that because we feel like people are judging us based on our responses to our kids. And yeah, you know what? My kid's throwing a fit on the floor. Sometimes that's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. And I just think that there's always some sort of I think at some level, most grown-ups know that kids out there are being treated poorly or abused, but there is a little anxiety or even a small trauma in really acknowledging that and then setting aside time to learn more about it. So I think I was surprised on the board sometimes uh, at the challenge of actually getting the presenters into the different locations because, it's WACC has a great reputation. It's free. I mean, what's this? Why say no, right?
What's the
But
barrier, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. But I think that is it. It's sort of, the leadership of any given organization is going to then, talk to their parents and say, just bringing this topic up creates some anxiety.
Absolutely.
And so that's a point of like leadership, I think, for WACC and for adults on behalf of children is to willing to take that discomfort on. I mean, it's real, but it's slight in compared to, the way that a child would suffer if we all ignored it.
Right. And I think I'm in that same space with you, Tom. I struggle with, people saying, well, I don't know if we really should bring that into this school right now or into this community or whatever, entity that we're trying to approach. Um, what is the holdup? What is the fear, right? Is there fear of judgment or retaliation from parents or whatnot? But I think it's important to remember that these types of things also need to be taught to kids, right? We need to teach that resilience. We need to teach that health and wellness and well-being is more than one or two things around the education piece. It's deeper than that, right? It's more than math, it's more than science, it's more than reading, and we know that. But what does that mean? How are we engaging kids in those conversations? The school counselors do a great job, and how do we help support that, right? As an agency, as an entity, we want to make sure that the social workers and the counselors and the teachers are able to meet those kids where they're at, for their emotional learning, their social emotional learning, and we can do part of that with them.
Yeah.
So my hope too is that some of that continues on in 2021. I know that this virtual process has been challenging for people, but we've been really fortunate. Like you said, we've got quality programs and quality staff, and they have flipped the programs and made them virtual in like no time. They flipped it so quickly and made sure that people had access to the services and supports we needed, because our biggest concern was that now that kids were home and no longer in front of teachers and no longer in front of the bus drivers and the people who make those child abuse reports, our concern was that parents were becoming overwhelmed, students and kids were being hidden, and that abuse was going to happen more frequently. We don't know the data for sure behind that right now, but history tells us that that is possible, that did take
Yeah.
place. So we're just trying to do our part to prevent that.
Yeah, I see that in my work every day with clients. I think that there's a lot of collective stress in the world. So
Yeah.
with stress, that some of that comes out in sort of unusual or sometimes even dangerous behaviors. So that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. What would you like to see happen in Washtenaw County as it relates to child abuse prevention, obviously, but what would you kind of see as the um, main thing that you'd like to have happen?
Yeah, in a word, I think what would be just amazing is just more connection. I feel like the county is blessed with so many resourced or wealthy people, right? And then at the same time, we have others that are really wanting for um, a myriad of things. Sometimes it's money, but a lot of times it's just a connection with a caring adult, like a mentoring role. And so I feel like we have a lot of programs that are focused on fixing problems, but if we had more money in just building connections between, like the Big Brother, Big Sister program, which I think is like a great model, but just the wait lists are always so long that at times I think families don't even put themselves on the list, so, but more things like that. And also if a mentoring program had some more resources, like maybe organized activities or a way to, spend some money while the mentor and mentee were spending time together. Just really lifting up time spent together,
Mhm.
not just donations. I think would
Which is
make a
really hard to do right now in light of COVID, but you're absolutely right. I wish you could see my board. It says connections matter, right? It's one of the
yeah.
most important things to us as human beings is we need to have that connection, that connectivity to other human beings, so that we feel like we're a part of something and that we have purpose and power, right? But you're absolutely right. There needs to be some more there. I don't know if you remember when you were on the board, but Robin, who's our cyber safety manager, she always talks about how when she goes into the classrooms and she asks the students about, okay, can you list 3 safe adults that you can go to if you have a problem, or can you list 3 friends that you could have a conversation with about these things? And kids struggle. They struggle to come up with 3 people. And that's disheartening, right? That's really unfortunate.
Yeah, that's a really succinct way of putting the idea that I'm trying to get across is like we need to fill that list.
Yeah.
And
They deserve it. They
yeah,
deserve that from us, right? As adults.
absolutely. And I think also it's incredibly powerful. There's a lot of evidence that just having one non-judgmental, empathic adult in your life that really listens and meets you where you are is so reparative and creates a sense of safety for children. Because I guess that's one last point I want to really bring out is that we're talking about the maltreatment of children, but so by definition they're not adults and they're just laying down how they're going to walk through the world, like how they understand the world, how they're going to be in relationship with people, that how they feel and identify themselves. So an interruption to that process just has enormous consequences, um, much more so than if these events started to happen to people at age 30, for example. There's a lot of added work and added to repair things and a lot of added damage when we're talking about children and adolescents.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know that I'm looking forward to 2021 and what the future brings, not only for WACC and the work that we do here to prevent child abuse, but also just for our community. I think there's a lot of repairing that can happen, and we're excited to be a part of that and thankful to be a part of that, about that process, not only for us, but for our community. I don't know if you want to answer this or not, but what are you looking forward to most in 2021?
Oh yeah, well this would be a big wish, but I had a brief stint in the Boy Scouts, and I remember one of the few badges I earned was like a citizenship badge, and I feel like that's kind of an old-fashioned word, but I'd love to see a return to like a sense of citizenship. This idea that we're living collectively in society and we all need to take care of each other. That could be anti-racism work, or it could be wearing a mask, or getting a vaccine, or attending. A discussion on child abuse prevention, but just really stoking the fires of citizenship and sort of collective wellness. I would love to see our society move in that direction.
I am with you 110%.
Yeah.
Tom, I appreciate you taking time to be with us today between 2 file cabinets. And I do look forward to working with you and continuing our work together in the community to building a stronger and more connected community for kids and for families. Thank you so much and happy 2021. I'm looking forward to what the future brings for all of us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I enjoyed it.